You are risking death. This is very serious.
These aren't storm clouds. This is a fucking ship! If they burn off the fucking ship, they burn off in East Palestine. This is not fucking storm clouds! Look at it! This is over Darlington.
dogs. You could pretty much walk outside our back door and they wait to say hi. Wanted nothing to do with us because of how you put them on the trailer and leave the way you did. And I know that sounds ridiculous and children are more important, but like, these are my children.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Jake Paisley. I'm the president of the Little Beaver Historical Society, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here. This will be an interesting program. It's been sponsored by 3 different groups: the Little Beaver Historical Society and Riverwise. I got that right, didn't I? And Kevin's group, the Social Voice. And we're going to have an interesting program here. What you're going to do is people will speak on what they witnessed and how they felt during the time of the derailment in East Palestine. And we're going to record this, and it will be in posterity. So when people want to study this 10, 20, 50 years from now, they'll have a treasure trove of information where people have them not through letters or diaries or secondhand experiences. We're going to have the folks give a description of what they felt, how they reacted when it happened. So this is going to be a very interesting program. As far as the Little Beaver Historical Society, if you're interested in history, I would recommend that you Google Little Beaver Historical Society, and you can see what we're all about, what we're all doing. We have a lot of stuff going on. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Daniel Rossi Keenan of the Riverwise organization.
Thank you, Jay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Daniel Rossi. As Jay said, I am the executive director of an organization called Riverwise, and we aspire to work around Beaver County. Admittedly, we haven't gotten this far north or west as often as I would like. But our organization is a community development organization. We work alongside municipalities, we work alongside entrepreneurs, community organizers, and we often step into communities where they have some sort of sense that they want something different for their community, but they're not quite sure how to get there. So I often say that we step into chaos and we try to help community residents wrangle that chaos into some sort of meaningful direction for a different kind of future. One of the things we do as part of that work is tell stories. If you think about it, history is really nothing but a collection of the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell one another about what we've experienced. And whatever's happened in East Palestine and whatever's happened in Northwest Beaver County, before too long it will become a series of stories, a series of memories. And Riverwise thought it might be helpful to help step alongside of the Historical Society and bring some of our storytelling capacity to bear, capturing, collecting, memorializing, and really honoring and dignifying those stories. What those of you who live near here have experienced is an unusual, I assume harrowing, but also a profound set of experiences. And stories can help us make sense of those experiences. They can help us figure out how to move forward, how to think about our past, how to potentially organize ourselves and react differently in the future. So all of those kinds of objectives are sort of baked into why an organization like Riverwise might be partnering on a project like this. I gotta say, it's been an honor and a privilege to get to know the Little Beaver Historical Society more. If you don't know their work, man, I mean, it is shockingly impressive. And I would just commend all of you to digging more deeply into their work, their story, and the way that they've dignified and continue to dignify the stories of Beaver County through the work that they have done. So, yeah, it's just been its own kind of reward to be working alongside folks like Jay and his team, and quite an honor. A couple quick things I'll say. Embedded throughout the evening, you're going to find QR codes. There's QR codes all over the place here. Some of them are going to show up on the screen behind me after some videos that we're going to share. There's some back on our table here where Kelly is, so wave. And if you would like to have your story captured, documented, memorialized, dignified, hit that QR code and it'll take you out to a simple form which you can fill out your name and information. We'd love to follow up with you, learn more about what your experience in these last handful of months has been. We do have an info table back here if anything I've said about Riverwise piques some interest in you. And I don't want to bore you with that, but we're here and we would love to get you on a mailing list, tell you a little bit more about what we're doing and how we have continued to work with over 100 organizations throughout Beaver County. One last thing I'll say, when this whole thing went down, there were a lot of folks around Beaver County who were looking at Northwest Beaver County. And I happen to be a small business owner now at Quippa. We set up a very simple drop point for residents to be able to come and give things they thought might be of some use to those who live here in these neck of the woods. That continues to show up at our store all these weeks later. And I'm not even sure exactly where it's coming from. But there's a table, a picnic table outside, and you'll see, it's the weirdest combination that you could ever imagine. But if any of it is of any value to any of you, please avail yourselves of that. I do not want to have to take it home, so maybe some of you can help me figure out how to get the right people. It's a very small and inadequate token, but a reminder that there's an entire county who has watched and experienced these things. We don't know what to do, but there are people who want to be helpful. So please do help me figure out what to do with those things. Finally, I want to introduce my friend Kevin Farkas. Kevin Farkas has been the engine, the brain, the heart, the soul. Kevin has really organized all of what you're experiencing here this evening. Kevin is a lot of things, but he is at heart a storyteller and director of the Social Voice Project. And he's going to come and tell you a little more about Steve.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm reluctant to leave all that stuff over there in case something goes off the rails, which it always does. So, yeah, we are recording tonight, and this recording is really important. As Jay said, these stories, what we do tonight and what we gather out in the people's ranches and their homes, in the communities, will be preserved for historical purposes, historical record, super important. We would lose our minds if we found a treasure trove of recordings just after Pearl Harbor, right? We would lose our minds. That would be so significant, right? So somebody down the line some year will find this treasure trove and say, wow, this is what this really was about. So what we're doing here is really oral history. And so oral history is basically, we capture one's lived experiences in your own words, right? That's what's really important. You're not going to get, with all due respect to our media friends who are here tonight, they have a job to do, right? And they come and they do things, and they publish their stories, which are great. But oral histories are those rich, in-depth, detail-oriented kinds of accounts. So that's what we're doing here. That's what we're going to try to do more of in the future, not only with the East Palestine train around it, but with other incidents too. We had a person who showed up at a meeting last night, and he's a community member, and he has a wealth of knowledge about how railroads work. I said, oh, we should record him just as a community member. That would be amazing. So, yes, we are recording here. We will be showing you some recorded interviews that Chris Patchett over there, one of the was brilliant filmmakers that I know, has done a couple pieces. We're going to show a couple clips from Chris. I have a couple pieces that we're going to show tonight. And in between that, we're going to have a few guest speakers come up. And then I believe we have, Beverly, do we have anybody who signed up to speak?
I believe we do. We have a couple, yes, we do have a couple speakers that's on deck.
Okay.
Jamie Wallace
Okay.
and one other one.
Okay, so there will be plenty of room for anyone who wants to come up here and grab the microphone. This is really important. This is very natural, right? We got the lights, the cameras, all that. There's an X, right? Stay on the X because the cameras are all trained on this X. But yeah, so do the best you can. If you're a little bit apprehensive about speaking in public, we're all friends here, right? We're all friends, so it's casual, okay? So I'm going to now pitch to our host for tonight, Mike Romai, longtime radio legend in Beaver County. You can hear him on the mornings, up at the dawn of, the dawn every morning on the air. Right, Mike? Yeah, right. You're a legend. You're a legend. Thank you so much for agreeing to host this event. These conversations really go well when you have somebody who can converse. And you are a pro at it, Mike, so I appreciate you coming and helping us out with this event. I'm going to ask, before you do your thing, I'm going to ask if you could work the lights when we go to the video, okay? Not now. Yeah. When we go to the video, if you can do that. And see, I didn't keep a space out back here so I could scurry back there, so my fault. Okay. Mike, how do you?
Thank you, and thank you for coming. They couldn't get Aaron Brockovich, okay, that's but yeah, I've been in the news media for more than 30 years, so currently with WBBP and WNBA. I do the morning show there. And it's important that you come out. And the reason I mention being with the news media is because I know the attention span is short. And this happened back on February 3rd. And for a lot of people, they moved on. A lot of the media has moved on from this story. A lot of the people have moved on with their lives. And they're not paying as close attention as the people who were directly affected by it. And that's why this is important. I've worked with Kevin Farkas and the Social Voice Project many times over the years, and I'm here to tell you that you can trust him reporting your stories for prosperity and for future generations to know about this. I'm a lifelong resident of Beaver County, grew up in Beaver Falls, live in Coppell. I've been in this hall, been in this area. I've been to East Palestine on numerous occasions. The gas is cheaper. That's why I've gone to East Palestine over the years. I drive out Taggart Road, go to League Oil, go to Circle K. I haven't been there since this occurred, but I used to travel that way all the time. And when they said this was going on, and you're watching it on the news media, you think, wow, we were right there. And I know from experience at Circle K, when I stayed there and pump gas, how fast those train cars roll through that area. I mean, there's just a wooden stop there as those trains go through there, and I'm pumping gas. I'm like, oh my God, these things are going fast. I'm used to these slow-moving trains going from Coppell to go to Coppell School or something like that. But this was wild. And then when you saw that, you said, I could understand how that could happen at the speed those things are going through there. So this is going to be one of those things with the Social Voice Project that people are going to remember. They're going to remember where you were when this happened. It's not like the JFK assassination or anything like that, but you're going to remember this date because I'm at the age where now I can say I'm old enough to remember. I'm old enough to remember when they said tornadoes can't come to this area. We'll never have tornadoes here. We got the trees and the hills that block us. We're not going to have a tornado. In 1985, we had a tornado. Killed some people, wiped out a lot of businesses and homes in the process. And I've covered blizzards and floods and that tornado in 1985. So this train derailment is something that you're going to remember and you're going to pass it on. And with the help of Kevin and the folks at Riverwise, they're going to pass your stories on to future generations so that when people say, no, that can't happen here. And when you see the trains rolling on the tracks, and ironically, as we're standing here prior to this, hear the train whistles going off in the distance. And it's not a far distance that those trains are rolling through. We don't know what's in those cars that they're moving along these tracks. I heard today, and it didn't make much more than a blip on the radar screen, but I heard that they moved 3 of the cars from over in East Palestine to Conway Yards in Beaver County. Now, they had them tested, they say, and they said that they were clear of any chemicals, but they moved them through Beaver County to Conway Yards. So people weren't paying attention anymore. I also heard in Ohio, in Columbiana, where there was a truck that was carrying some of that soil. And it tipped over. Are you hearing about it? Is anybody seeing it? Anybody noticing it? We just have to believe what we're told, is what they tell us. But with your stories, that's going to change. And your stories are making an impact. But the main point is, don't let them forget. Don't let Norfolk Southern, the news media, or anybody, your elected officials, forget that this affected you, and you don't know long term what effect it's going to have on you. So those stories have to be told. But it's an honor to be here to talk with you. I'm thankful to Kevin for asking me to come on out and talk with you. But the main conversations that you want to hear about are the people, and the people who experience that. So we're going to introduce you to some of those folks tonight going forward. And so we're going to go to another video at this time, though. What you're going to see is Rachel Wagner. Rachel is the owner of a family farm in Arlington. I should know better than to walk in front of speakers with a microphone. Rachel is owner of a family farm in Darlington, and they experienced lack of communication and confusion about the burn-off and the evacuation. And I remember getting calls on my radio show saying, for people from Darlington, nobody's paying attention to us. Nobody's telling us what's going on. East Palestine's getting all the attention, but we need to know what's happening as well, and nobody's telling us. Here's Rachel Wagner's story.
We found out about the train derailment on Friday, and I just thought it was oh, isn't that a crazy thing? A train derailed right by Leaks gas station. Like, that's a pretty bad situation. And then you just kind of go through the weekend and you think it's under control because you don't hear anything. And then we all got text message alerts that night saying that basically the situation over in East Palestine was like getting less stable, and evacuate the 1 mile area, which right here we're about a little over 3 miles as the crow flies from where the derailment was. Okay, well I guess if we needed to leave, they would tell us something. But then Monday morning I take my kids to daycare in Chippewa, and I was coming back here just to check to see if anyone had lambs. And then I saw that 51 was closed, and which I didn't know about. And then I came in and I, encountered a state trooper at the intersection to turn to come to the farm. So I stopped and I said, "Hey, can I get into my farm?" And he said, "No, you can't. The road's closed. Like, we can't let you go that way." And I was like, "Well, you take care of the animals, because when things go awry, they can go awry pretty quickly with landing. So you want to just be there to assist." Anyway, I went in anyway. I went a little back way, down another road, and got in. But as I was coming in, I called my mother-in-law, who lives on the farm, and said, "Hey, 51 is closed, and they weren't going to let me come back here." And she had no clue. So I was not allowed to come in, but she was in the zone where I couldn't go, and she didn't know anything. I had some farmer friends from other parts of the county text me and say, "Hey, do you need us to take anything in? Do you need us to do anything?" Like, people were asking me, and I said, "I don't know. I don't know what I need to do, because there's no information, except I know that they closed the road, but they're not telling anyone to leave." And that was, from seeing other people's posts on Facebook and just talking to everyone, that was a big point of confusion for a lot of people in Darlington and around here, because we didn't know what to do. And I remember signing up for the alert system, and they're like, "Well, you gotta do this, because if not, you're not gonna know." Well, I fucking did, and you still didn't tell me anything. Until right when it, it's an hour before, hunker down, everybody. They can do detailed ones, or they can, and very specific to certain areas, right? Because they know where you're at. So they could have, I don't know how, if I evacuation work, but they could have made it clear, like, things are going on, this is the evacuation zone. If you're like in a 5-mile radius or a 4-mile radius, you might want to think about, like, if you're comfortable, leave. You know, we're hearing all kinds of things, and people will, like, if there's a vacuum, people will fill it with information, whether it's good or not. And that's the whole thing about emergencies, right? Like, you have to prepare for any kind of crazy situation, and you have to just be able to, like, problem solve your way through it. But along the way, you have to communicate with people. Like, you don't want to give them too much to scare them, but if you don't tell them something, people will make it up, especially with social media. I mean, people up here already feel, I guess, like, people in rural areas feel a little, like, we already feel like people don't care about what the people out in the, you know, outskirts think. I mean, we're at the very top part of the county. Like, you feel like you're kind of on your own. Yeah, my animals look to me, I have to look to someone else. I was looking to Governor DeWine to give me information. Me, a tax-paying resident, small business owner in Pennsylvania. I know where this is tough. I know this is tough, and no one foresaw this happening. But just, you gotta do better. You gotta do better. You can't shut the road down and then not tell all the people within the zone that just not tell them anything. They just have to assume they're cool. You gotta do better.
A lot of people thinking that they were all alone in this. They didn't know where to turn for the information. And that's what we're hearing, especially in the early hours of this. You could still drive along 51 in the early hours of this before they closed the roads down. An East Palestine resident and Little Beaver Historical Society board member, Bob Kibler, is with us tonight. And Bob is here to tell the story. Come on up, Bob. You're gonna have to come up here because the X, this is where Jay Leno stands.
I don't like public speaking. That's why I was always back in the back row of the course at the Eagles. So about 9:30 Friday night, my little dog, which anybody that knows me, I just love my dog, started going all crazy, and it sounded like, well, it was a cold night, sounded like snowplow going up and down the road. And he was just going all crazy, and Dad even noticed it. And so I went over to the window, and I just picked him up and held him by the window and opened up the curtain and said, see, it's a snowplow. Only when I was looking down at it, there was no snowplow, and there was barely any snow coming down. And I kept looking, because we live up on a hill, and on the road there was nothing. No accumulation whatsoever. So, a couple of minutes later, I go out there, and I'm a clock watcher, always a clock watcher, and about 5 after 10, quarter after 10 there, I go outside to have a cigarette. And I look outside, and as soon as I stepped out there, it looked like a pyramid of fire, just going up. And after about 5 minutes of watching this and having my cigarette kind of burn out of my hand, I ran inside and said, Dad, you gotta look out the window. He looked out the window, and he was like, oh my God. And at that point, we hadn't heard any sirens whatsoever. So I called 911. As soon as I dialed 911, the sirens started going off around town. And I'm calling in, and she's like, you can hear in the background phone calls going off left and right. And she's like, 911 emergency, and I'm like, there's a huge fire around the railroad there, around Taggart Street, and she's like, yes, we know you're the 17th caller, click. And the only reason I think that she hung up so quickly was because, well, she's had 16 other callers, and I heard the phones ringing off the hook. Now, whether or not I was actually the 17th caller, I have no clue. She might have just thrown in the number. But after that, I went outside and I'm texting and calling people saying, hey, do you know what's going on down there at Taggart Street? And, and I had no clue it was a train derailment. And finally, a friend of mine said, give me a second. And he sent me pictures of the train derailment in his backyard. And I don't know if anybody here knows Bill Hudar. He sent me a couple of pics of one actually in his backyard, or he walked up to the railroad or something. And I was like, holy crap. And now about 10:35, I was out there and I was texting, and the only reason I remember the time because I was texting my brother saying, what is going on? And that's when the smell first hit me. And I'll just tell you what, that smell hit me, and all I thought was paint thinner. And that's when I put my phone away, and I went inside and got on the computer there. And I don't know how in the heck they sit there and say that it took 3 days for them to figure out that it was vinyl chloride and all those other chemicals, because I was on the computer and I found out that night vinyl chloride, and I told my dad that those two little words, and anybody that knows my dad knows what kind of science background he has and how smart the man is. Now, mind you, he's in stage 2 dementia, but as soon as I said that, he said, we're out of here. And he didn't even bother putting on clothes. He just went in his PJs, and I loaded him up and the animals up in the car, and we went to the other side of town to my brother's. And Sunday, when everybody's going down to Norfolk for the reimbursement checks, the $1,000 inconvenience fee, one of my buddy's parents came up to me, Dave Mahoney, and he said, Bob, I know you kind of know a little bit about what's going on. You always know what's going on in this town in some way or shape or form. They say I can't go back to my house right now. And he's on Alice Street, and he's in the 1 mile marker, just like our house. And I was like, well, go down and talk to the police department, and they're going to tell you the same thing I'm about to tell you. It's vinyl chloride. If you go in your house for any prolonged period of time past 15 minutes, you're going to have trouble breathing down the road. And he looked at me. At that point in time, there was a camera crew there. And I don't think anybody else in the place had heard vinyl chloride. Because all of a sudden, this camera crew started looking at me, and then as soon as I said that, somebody from behind those things started talking, and somebody came up front and started talking and said, just take the forms with you, go ahead, get out of here, go. And I don't think I was ever recorded by saying that on that night, or that Sunday daytime. And I still today don't know how the railroads can sit there and say they didn't know what was on it right away when people knew that night. At least I knew. And then all of a sudden, we get shooed out the door of the East Palestine Park Community Center. We get rushed out of there. Those forms in hand. That's when I knew something was up. So I go back to my brother's place. My brother's unit was one of the first ones on the scene. And he was just telling me about putting in 36 hours straight coming in, dying right on, falling dead asleep right on his couch, and then waking up and going back out there and doing it again. And he's a full-time teacher, on top of being a firefighter. And he just went out there and kept doing it and plugging it away. He said to me, just take care of your dad. That's it. Take care of our dad. As soon as that happened, the one day, Monday, he said, look, if somebody comes and tells you to evacuate, we evacuate. So that Monday, when the controlled burn happened, I was going out of town. I was going to meet some of my friends that were already evacuated from the 1 mile. I knew nothing about the controlled burn. All my brother said was, if somebody tells you to leave, you leave. So I was going up Brookdale, going up to Unity, because that's the quickest way from his house to get on the 14, take it to 51. I knew nothing about the roadblocks. I got up there, I talked to a state trooper. He told me, hey, if you leave in town, you leave in town, and you gotta get a hotel room. I'm like, well, I got my dad, a dog, and a cat to take. And he's like, go get it. No longer did I get back to my brother's house, somebody from the National Guard showed up in a Jeep and said, you gotta go. And I'm like, I'm already packing them up. Took them, got them. We were in a state of panic. I got down here and met up with my friend who was already in a hotel there in Chippewa, that Microtel. You guys know Keith Davis. And basically, for the next 3 hours, I was trying to find a place to stay. And ended up down there at the Vermont on 18. And finally ended up there and just, driving back and forth between Chippewa, helping them out, helping my friends that were at the Microtel, helping my friends that were at the Ramada Inn. And then one day, you're just out there and it's just all the signs were there, and it's just the darkness that came from this. When we go back home, in my house, Chris has been to it, you could smell the day you came up there. And there's a wind stream that goes straight from the site, straight up to my front porch. And every time I step outside and smoke a cigarette, the only time that I've had a rush of fresh air since then was yesterday. And I'll tell you what, it's the scariest thing. Our little heart of America, East Palestine, Ohio, got blown up, and how do you recover from this? That's the scary thing. How do you recover from this? And I've heard a lot of people say, what do you want? What do you want from Norfolk? And the one word that comes to my mind is accountability. We want them to be held accountable for allowing this kind of event to happen. That's it.
Next up is Grant McVeigh. Grant is an East Palestine resident. He has family in the area, and he's with us here tonight. Attorney Grant McVeigh, thank you for coming.
I appreciate it. First off, I want to say thank you to everybody for making this happen and giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. And yes, my name is Grant McVeigh, born and raised in East Palestine. I had to relocate to Cleveland because that's where jobs were. I put out at least 100 resumes to the surrounding areas and couldn't find a job. Relocated up there. Now, I graduated from East Palestine in '94. My parents were both school teachers there for 40 plus years. My dad had been various high school coaches, football, basketball, baseball in different years. My brother is a teacher at Crestwood. Now, what struck me is, the first I really heard about this whole incident I'll never forget it. It happened to be at a political event on the Sunday, following the Friday, right? So on the 5th. And lo and behold, I didn't know anything about this, right? And it really struck me because it seemed like to me that the media was not following it. It was a blackout, essentially. And I started to get concerns, like we all did. I mean, you got to be living it knee deep, and that's when I became aware of it. And I started thinking to myself, what is really going on here? Especially seeing the pictures that I saw. There was only, it was from common citizens, right? John Key Public Citizen. It was real disturbing to me. And again, I ended up getting a call on Monday from a friend of mine talking about this controlled burn. What do I do? And I said, well, I don't know, but we'll figure out what we can do. And up to that point, my total thought about this entire situation is that it's a complete failure of government at all levels. Now, at first, I don't think that anybody can hold local authorities accountable at first. I don't know what's going on now, and I'll tell you right now, I am not one to be a conspiracy theorist at all. But when you look back at this and how it transpired, that, the federal government didn't really care, like, what's the big deal, as the Department of Transportation Secretary says. DeWine didn't care after they evac people out. And by the way, my mom was in the evac zone. Yeah, it's safe to go back. And seeing what happened, I mean, we all know the pictures that look like a bomb went off in East Palestine. And what kills me is that the lack of response, federal and state, right? I mean, I received 120 calls that first weekend from people that I knew. And I trust what they were telling me is the absolute God's honest truth because I've known them for 40 plus years. And I know they weren't misrepresenting things. And some of the stuff that I was hearing that, how much was dumped and dropped in that area, and what the Norfolk Southern do after they had this control burn, which might not have necessarily been necessary, right? We don't know that quite yet. But what did they do? They threw down slag, put down rails, and was back to business as always, right? They didn't do anything about this soil that had, what, million gallons of toxic material that was dumped? And they didn't do anything until the EP report came out saying that it was contaminated soil. And what did they do then? Then they ripped it up and started remediating. Yet at that time, nobody was doing anything. DeWine could care. Nothing came from the federal government at all. And as you would guess, and as everybody in this room is feeling, has felt, a gut punch from the government, the people that are supposed to be looking out for us, right? They were denying what was going on. It's okay, just ignore it. The issue with the whole burn and the dioxins that were converted because of the burn. Don't worry about it. And it just struck me so much. The people I was talking to, not only were they giving me accurate renditions of what was going on, but I could hear it in their voices, the trauma that they were undergoing at the exact moment. One thing that I do have a ton of experience with is working with victims. And I know when I'm talking with them. And I'll be damned if I wasn't talking to one every time I'm on the phone. They felt helpless, they didn't know what to do. And there wasn't much to be done. Long and short of it. And right now, there's still not much that can be done. The answers are still not being answered. There's people that got sick, and we all know that. Now, one thing that I have to say, and I'm not taking credit for this, but I was probably part of a million people at the time. Because I'm an attorney, it seems like some people have a way of listening to me a little bit more, whether it's national media or whoever. I did an interview in Cleveland, local news up there. Within 24 hours, I got a call to go on Fox News. And until that time, nobody was doing anything. Biden didn't send anybody who could have cared. What did DeWine do? A bunch of nothing but rubber stamp, because he got a lot of money from Norfolk Southern backers. A lot of money. So in this interview, I went through and I did some fact checking, and I know they fact checked me, because I told them, people were sick, this is what happened, my basic chemistry tells me these things happen as a result. yet they're saying it's all safe. And to that point in time, nothing was going on. That interview I did at 4 o'clock in the morning, live. By the time I got on my regular day job during the morning, about 10, 11 o'clock, there had been press conferences, right? And Biden said that FEMA, CDC, and EPA, of which, and I'm sure you guys all know, they were placeholders. They did nothing. Nothing they're supposed to do. Window dressing for what we believe should happen, right? Our government. And then DeWine said, I'm going to send people to. And I will tell you that the thing that upset me most, not only was the gut punch for East Palestine in Western Pennsylvania, and believe me, I've been saying that as much as possible because it seems as though, to me, the only thing that really mattered to a lot of people was East Palestine. But we know that that's not the case, right? Western Pennsylvania got nailed. Negley, down to Calcutta. And I can tell you, after talking with people, there are people that it's all over the place. We know this is really strange, right? I know people that are in the same household, and some people were having issues. The same people who live in that household are not having issues. That's created, to me, a type of tension that's going on right now in what our friends and neighbors, people we love most. And it's creating conflict. People are unbelievers to a degree. And for lack of better terms, I think that we need to listen to the canaries in the coal mine, the people that are sensitive, the people that are sick, because they're showing us the way for actual contamination still present. And the mere fact that these placeholders haven't done anything is really scary to me, yet they say they are. We know we really haven't gotten any direction from the CDC as to the medical stuff that should be going on, and that's unfortunate, but they're saying otherwise. FEMA says, fill out a form, I'll get back to you. What are they supposed to do? Give people out of disaster zones to protect them, right? They don't do that. They haven't done any of that. I've got people that have had bloody noses since the incident, extreme bloody noses. People that have not gotten out of bed, keep getting worse. There's people with tumors now, cysts. And you know what? They didn't have these issues prior to the derailment. And I'd be remiss in saying that there's not an issue, I believe, with school systems right now. At least in East Palestine, I have several clients that are staffers that have toxic exposure results. Yet there's still kids there. DeWine said it's okay. And the reason why these things are still going on is because there's a tension between the people that are still feeling that are blessed to be healthy in their mind's eye, but they're ignoring the canary in the coal mine right beside them that's showing them that there's a problem. And I'll be damned if there's not a problem. There's a certain way to do proper cleaning, and that hasn't been happening, whether it's in East Palestine, Western Pennsylvania, or the like. And people just ignored it, and then now the media is kind of rolled past that to a degree. And I hope that we get retribution and justice. That's what this is about. I'm trying to protect people. And I'll be damned if I can't do everything in my power, now and forever, to protect those that I love the most. And that's this area. And I'm sorry that we're here talking about this. It breaks my heart. I've cried many times about this stuff. But don't give up. Keep fighting. And don't ignore the small stuff. It does matter. Thanks.
And again, we want to thank you all for coming here tonight. The purpose of this get-together is to hear the stories of the people who have lived through it, people who are still looking for answers to the questions. We didn't invite politicians, we didn't invite attorney groups or anything like that, because this is about preserving the stories of the people in the area, the people who are experiencing this, and the people who can tell those stories about what happened in this area for future generations so that it is not forgotten. One of those people is Jerry Corbin. Jerry lives in Darlington Township. I know Jerry, he's a veteran. He has one lung. So when he realized the toxic chemicals were spreading from the East Palestine train derailment just 1¼ miles away from his home, he and his wife immediately evacuated. Not long after, when the national media came to get their stories, Jerry wanted to make sure that reporters understood the trauma communities were experiencing on both sides of the Ohio-Pennsylvania line. Here's Jerry Porter.
Pennsylvania. We came home around 9 o'clock or a little after, and we realized that we didn't have any bread or milk for the morning. So we decided to take the back road into town. I think that's Pleasant Drive. And it's a rough, windy road, but it goes into the back way into East Palestine. And as we got into the outskirts of town, and we drove up to where Main Street juts off to the left, and then the next street is Alice Street, and by the time we got to Alice Street, we could see like a wall of flames. And I mean, the sky was filled with smoke and red, orange sky. It looked like it was becoming dawn again from the brightness of it. And it was mesmerizing. We couldn't take our eyes off it. We just stopped in the middle of the street. There was no one else around. And we didn't know whether to go any further or not. We didn't know what we were seeing. So I looked out of the corner of my eye. I could see a city truck down there blocking the street, about a block down. And it looked to me like they saw me up there, and they pulled out and started coming toward me. And maybe I shouldn't be there. Maybe they're going to run me off, and I didn't want to cause them any more trouble than they already had, because it was clearly, the fire was enormous. The light, the smoke, the taste of metallics in your mouth instantly, and coughing, and headache instantly from this. And I only have one lung, and I have asthma. So I knew I'd had cancer in '95, and took out one of my lungs. So I knew that I had to beat it out of town. So I turned around right there, and we headed back down Pleasant Drive toward home. And when we got home, we packed a bag real quick with just essentials, and we headed toward Beaver Falls, looking for a hotel, because I knew I couldn't stay there. I could have been sick for months. That was quite a sensational story. And that's what sells. Newspapers, that's what sells news. So yes, that's what they were after. But they had a heart in what they were doing. The Wall Street Journal. Dustin was a photographer. He was a great guy out of Cincinnati. And the other fellow, I can't remember his name right now. But I took them into town and introduced them to different people so that they could get a better rounded story. Some of the business people and people I knew for years. And I introduced them to this one lady that we came across quite by accident. She works in a store there. And her house is right on top of the creek that runs through town. It runs under her house. And they had to move, and the railroad had her put up in a hotel in Chippewa, I believe. She was suffering horribly from the traumatic. She had to move her grandmother, and her grandmother wanted to move back into the house. And she couldn't let her. Her kids, all her clothing, she was crying on the street. And Wall Street Journal took pictures and everything. And she said, "You want to come inside?" The smell won't go away in her house because the creek runs right underneath her house. You want to come inside? And neither one of them wanted to go inside. What I mean is, they loved the story, but they had a lot of empathy for what people were going through. And I appreciated that.
Jerry Corbin. Our next speaker is a Darlington resident. She is also a community helper. She's been distributing water. Her name is Sally Mahon. Is Sally here? No, Sally's not. Okay. Rick is not here either. Is there anybody, you want the audience to participate? If anybody else has a story that, if you signed up for anything, yeah, come on. And your name is?
My name is Jamie Wallace.
Jamie Wallace. And you're from?
East Palestine.
East Palestine.
My name is Jamie Wallace, but on the night of February 3rd, I was still Jamie Koza. I was sitting in my apartment in East Palestine. It's about 1.1 miles from the train derailment. I was watching, my husband's friend had come down from Cleveland, so I was watching his child and my child, and I'm sitting there. All of a sudden I hear sirens. So I do what everybody in East Palestine does. I pick up the phone and I call my mom. And I'm like, what's going on? And she said, a train derailed. And I said, where at? She said, by Leaks gas station. My husband was at the State Line bar with his friend right next door. So I immediately called him and I said, you need to come home. I heard there's a fire. He said, it's no big deal, it's small, don't worry about it. 10 minutes later, he calls me and he's like, I'm on my way home. He's like, Leaks gas station is about to blow. So he came back to the house and we hear all the sirens and still just kind of don't know what the extent of this derailment is. And then I get the phone call from my mom. She said they just came to our house, everyone within a 1 mile radius of the James Street crossing needs to evacuate. And I'm like, I'm getting out of here. I grabbed my baby, 3 years old, my husband, her grandma, grabbed a couple of clothes, and we took off not even knowing where we were gonna go. We were just kind of driving around aimlessly, and I'm hearing already that there's not a lot of hotels around. So I went to my brother's hotel in Columbia, and I said, hey, we're just gonna crash with you for the night. You know, I thought in the morning they would tell us we could go home. The next day, my husband and I woke up early and drove into town just to kind of see what was going on, and you could just see smoke everywhere. And I'm like, we need to get out of here. So we left and we found our own hotel down in West Virginia. And we still, you know, we're in a state of panic. We don't know what's going on. My family's all spread out now, staying everywhere from Boardman to Columbia to West Virginia. So that Sunday, I had to go home to go to the assistance center that was in the East Palestine Park and, you know, get a reimbursement to pay for the hotel. And then I was gonna run to my house to grab medication. When I was at the assistance center, everyone was saying this smell is so much worse between East Palestine and Negley, which is right down over the hill. I thought, oh, that's strange. I put in my driveway, Sulphur Run runs right along my driveway. As soon as I put in my driveway, the smell hit me. Immediately, my niece and I started coughing, and I said, the water's contaminated. That creek is contaminated. Before anyone ever told me that, I knew. I didn't need a scientist to tell me. I know what I smelled. I know what I saw. I knew the way I felt. I quickly ran to my house. I grabbed clothes out of the dryer, the medication, and my work bag with my laptop. We go back to the hotel room. The whole entire room smells like chemicals. You can taste the metallic taste in your mouth, eyes burning, nose burning. Take the clothes down, wash them all. Next morning, I pulled my laptop out of my bag, and I smelled it on my laptop. I knew that wasn't right. So a couple days later, after the big controlled burn, they lifted the evacuation and said everybody can go home now. They came and tested my air. Walked through your house very quickly. You're good, it's safe. And I said no. I want water testing and I want soil testing. My front door is about 5 paces to the embankment of Sulphur Run. That creek goes from 6 inches to about 4.5 feet with good rain. I said, you can't tell me living this close to the creek. So I threw a fit. And I threw a fit because I listened to my gut. As a mother, I was not taking my daughter back in that house because I knew that what they were telling me was wrong. I know it's already been said, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not one of those people that would ever think that the EPA would lie, but I knew in my gut they were. So I threw a big enough fit. The guy from the railroad came down to my house, and he said, you know, you are kind of in a unique position. I'm going to send my toxicologist out. We'll go ahead and keep paying for your hotel until we get it all cleared. The toxicologist came to my house. He looked around outside, said it was fine. Goes in the house and looks at my basement, and there's about maybe a 12-inch wide strip of moisture going down the wall. And immediately, he changed his tone. He said, if that water puddles, it could cause vapors, and he's talking all this stuff that's kind of over my head. Next day, the railroad calls me, and they say, do you run or own? I said, I just rent. They said, okay, we'll move out. You know, we'll pay all your moving expenses, give you a couple months rent. You know, you're right, your house is in a unique position. But I didn't go quietly, because if they were wrong about my house, they were wrong about other people's houses. Not only do I have 47 immediate family members that live within that 1 mile zone, those are all my friends. Those are my family, you know, people that I've grown up with since I was this high. It was my community, I wasn't leaving. But had I gone back in that house with my daughter, I probably wouldn't be standing here talking to you guys today. So again, it was just that gut feeling and just knowing things weren't right. Not even a week later, that night, my daughter started to nose running. I started getting some stuff in my chest. A week later, we both ended up going to the hospital, and they tell us we have upper respiratory infections. I've had mine for 2 months now. 46 years old, I've had upper respiratory infections. This is not an upper respiratory infection. It gets worse every time I go into town to do an interview, to a meeting. I come home, my nose is just running. My tongue tingles and burns. My lips are on fire. They're actively poisoning our community. Not everybody can get out. There's still people there that want to get out. That feeling that I got when I saw that big mushroom cloud over my hometown, Norfolk Southern took something from me that they can never get back to me. I felt like all my childhood memories, my dad that just passed away last year, playing in the cribs when I was a kid. They took things from me that money can't buy. They took my peace. You know, home's supposed to be the one place that you feel safe, that you feel comfortable. I'll never feel safe or comfortable in my home again. The fact that I live in the United States of America, God rest his soul, my grandfather, World War II vet, Marines, always, you know, everybody proud American. So ashamed to live in this country that we're being left to just die. Like we're nothing, like our lives are expendable. I just kept thinking that someone was going to come in and save us. And now 2 months later, I realized we have to save ourselves. The only people that have been there for us are other community members in the communities that surround us. And when I say us, it's not just people of East Palestine. The people of PA probably got it worse with that controlled burn. When I was speaking on this to the White House, when I was speaking to senators, when I was speaking to people from the House of Rep, I made sure that I mentioned Pennsylvania and Negley. Because people think that we're being taken care of in East Palestine, we're not. But you guys are getting elected a lot more than we are. What the future holds, I don't know. The way it's changed my life. Again, I'm 46 years old. It should be going into my golden years. Sitting on my porch, sipping my coffee, watching the grandkids play. And it was when I was laying in bed sick at the hotel from being in town, growing up, and I just thought, I just want to be home in my own bed. And it was kind of like reality smacked me in the face, kind of when somebody passes and it's not until 2 months later when you go to call that person. And I realized this is going to be the rest of my life. Until I'm in that dirt, I'm going to be fighting this, and I'm going to be fighting it for my daughter. These short-term symptoms are bad. I'm not even fighting for myself at this point. In 20 years, if I get cancer, I'm gonna have 1 foot in the grave anyways. My daughter that's 3, she won't. So this fight's for our kids, it's not even for ourselves. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you, guys.
These are the stories that have to be heard. These are the stories that have to be preserved for the future. Is there anybody else that has anything to say, wants to say, anything, experience? What we're dealing with, and I think what you're dealing with specifically, if you're from East Palestine, Darlington, Eden, New Galilee, these areas, is well water, air quality, soil. It's that time of the year where they're tilling soil if they feel safe enough to do it. And it's planting season for a lot of those folks out there. And the problem is we have a history in this nation. This isn't a oral history that Kevin and the folks from Riverwise are putting together, but we have a history. Many of you might remember Love Canal and some of the other places in the United States that residents said, something's not right here. We don't feel right. A number of cancer cases and a number of other things that go on. And the government said, nah, there's nothing wrong here. There's nothing going on. So 10, 20 years later, that's why this is just not an immediate impact issue. You're sharing the stories, you're selling those stories today, or giving us those stories today. But what does happen to your children and your grandchildren? How do we know what's in the water? They do the testing. One of the ironic things was that a lot of folks had their water tested and their houses gone through, only to find out later that more folks up and paid these people to come in. And so you're going to get a good appraisal for that. It remains to be seen. Kenny? Yeah, sure, absolutely. What's that? Oh, no. I'm just saying soil, air, water, those are the things that people have to be careful about in the future. I'm sure as we spoke, as you just spoke, that the idea that you feel secure and safe in what you're being told is the part that's on your mind.
One of the things that I've been asking people in the interviewing, and this comes at the end, is so what? What do we do now? What have we learned? Where do we stand with all that has happened to us? And some people have said, yeah, we're on our own. We have to fight. We have to do whatever we can to get through this. For myself, I live in West Mayfield, and when this happened, I think I've been following this since the earliest sirens went off. On social media, watching the whole thing go down. I have a background in language and discourse, and I was just keen on what was unfolding, how people were talking about this incident on Facebook, and it was mind-blowing. People didn't know what was going on. Rumors were flying, rumors based on rumors. It was just incredible. That's a side story. What I noticed with Beaver County was that there was silence. In fact, our emergency management Facebook didn't comment at all until Sunday. Right? So what was going on? What was going on? Everybody was asking what was going on. And I said, geez, these communities seem to be asleep at the wheel. The emergency people, I should say, the emergency management coordinators in the communities, based on what I observed, were non-responsive. And people were asking, what do we do? Where's the information coming from? Who is in charge here telling us what to do? So I actually run the West Mayfield Borough website. So after the controlled burn, they had a council meeting. And so I went to the council meeting after looking at the website, and I'm the one who put it together, and I said, geez, there is no clear channel for communication here on this website. So I took it upon myself to streamline that page, to put the person in charge right up top with phone numbers and email addresses, and a message section right up top. This is what you should, if there's something that happens, this is what you should see, right at the top of that page. So I went to the council meeting and I said, hey, you know what? This is what I did. I saw this stuff go on social media. I took it upon myself to streamline this page, and there it is. And so what are you guys going to do about it? Right? Are you going to, as a community, as the government of Are you going to think about this? Are you going to come up with some sort of plan in case this happens to us? That train would have come right through West Mayfield at the bottom of 37th Street, if you know that area. We could have faced that, right? So, my personal take on this was that, oh, I saw all this stuff happening, and I decided to do something about it in whichever little way I could, right? As the website administrator, I fixed the page, I think I fixed it, I addressed council, and they all nodded their heads, yes, we should do this. And they said, oh, would you put up on there that everyone should sign up for they call it Alert 911 now, the system. Well, I signed up for that a long time ago. I never got any alert. And when this happened, I looked at the news, and that plume from the original train derailment came all the way down, right through Chippewa, right down as far as I saw, almost to Beaver. And I was just off the edge of it, so, yeah, okay, so this impacted me, right? So I have a stake in all this too. So what are our communities doing with something like that, with something that might happen in the future? So the council said, well, why don't you put up on the Facebook page, everyone should sign up for the alert system. So I did. I don't know if anyone did, but I did put that up there. So that was a little proactive step. So I come back to the next council meeting next month, and I ask, where are we with our emergency plan? Has anybody thought about this? Is any meetings taking place? Is anybody thinking now? Wow, what if this happens in our community, right? With our own train tracks, right? I got nothing. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's, I got nothing from this group who you would think would be in charge of something like this. And I think that my observation is that this is the story in many, many, many communities all around, that for whatever reason, we're still not rising to the occasion. We're still not stepping up, I think, in addressing some of these issues that we see unfolding right now before us. That's my little 2 cents for my quarter of the word. Do we have anybody else? Okay, come on up, sir. Let's get to you. Could you repeat that over?
Yes, my name is Eric Coase. I'm from East Palestine. I live 300 yards away from where it derailed. I was sitting on my couch. I do foster care. I've been doing it for 5 years. I had 3 teenage kids, 1 female at 17, and 2 16-year-olds. I was sitting there, and I was outside on the front porch. I was smoking a cigarette because I heard the screeching. Approximately, I'd say 5 minutes later, I seen the flames shoot up as higher than houses. So I instantly ran in. I told everybody. I said, get ready. I said, because this train derailed and we're going to have to get out of here. Because the fire looked like it was coming right towards our house. So I got everything ready, and by that time, I had a police officer, sheriff, Birmingham County Sheriff Department, knocking on my door. I said, I'm getting ready. I said, we're leaving. So I take 3 foster kids, 3 adults, and I have 2 dogs, large dogs. I paddle everybody up as much as I can in the car, and we take off, and Jamie's my sister. We go up to Columbiana. I go into Columbiana, and I said, I'm on a room, $170 a night. I was like, what? I said, you don't understand what's going on. I said, do I get a veteran's discount? Oh, if you're a veteran, we'll knock off 10%. Okay, whatever. So I do that, and so we didn't have any money at the time, so I couldn't afford to stay there no longer. So I had a friend that worked down in Lisbon. She was the manager of the Days End down there, and she said, I'll give you my price, it's $29 a night. I said, wonderful. I said, I appreciate this, so I get it down there and I pay for the whole week. So then, of course, they told us we could come back. Well, the thing is we didn't even have a plan to come back. They said some nonsense of how to get back to my home. I was like, I know how to get back to my home. So I go back to my home after we unpack, get all the kids back there. I have 4 days left, I think, of the week that I spent. And while I was down here, I skipped the lunch part, because this is the biggest part what I want to speak about. While I was down in Lisbon, The county agencies came in, and I'm at a treatment facility, foster home. They come in and they took my kids. They took my kids because of the behaviors that they was having down there. It wasn't, they keep asking me why, you know, under HIPAA law, I can't honestly say, but the NS drills me. Why do the county's coming and taking your kids? I said, because you're trained in there. And that's all I'm going to give you. So I come back after I take my children. They took 2 of my children, 1 of them. Actually, I had 1 for 3 years. I was in the final stage of adoption. Final stage of adoption. He was graduating high school. He was going to walk across the stage. I was so proud of him. They take him up to Cleveland. He never got enrolled in school. He failed. He didn't get to walk across the stage. This kid had a rough life. I was pissed. I was pissed. I took it out on the city politicians. I said, you know, when the fire chief got up there and said that, you know, all I do is fight fire, honestly, I got mad. I said, you're disqualified. You're disqualified because you went to a fire, and everybody knows there's an ABC fire extinguisher for a reason. You don't spray chemicals on water on a chemical fire. To me, that's what spread into our wells and into our creeks. That's my personal opinion. So I got angry, and then I started feeling sorry for everybody because when I posted stuff, I was getting bashed. And I'm still getting bashed because you can ask, Grant, you can ask my sister. I'm out there belly crawling, taking pictures. Sitting up at the park. I just did this yesterday. I'm sitting at the park and watching one of the trucks from the dirt from the park. So I follow them. And they go up Brookdale Avenue, and my grandfather's buried at the cemetery. They pull in there and they start dumping this dirt. I posted it all over Facebook. I got bashed for this. How do you know it's contaminated? I don't care if it's contaminated. You're digging up dirt out of the park for a reason, or you wouldn't be digging it up. Now you're poisoning the other half. So I've been fighting the fight, and my point about being up here is that, DeWine signed my foster care license. He signed it. So they're coming in and taking my kids out of my home, and then DeWine's sitting there being two-faced and taking my kids out of the home and the same thing, saying it's safe. Our homes are not safe. I've been on antibiotics and prednisone. I've gained 25 pounds in the last 2 weeks from the prednisone. I've been griping to him. I've been griping to everybody. I've walked from East Palestine all the way negatively through the creeks. There's nothing alive. Nothing. There ain't a fish, frog, lizard. I had a bird that was flapping. I posted it on Facebook. I got bashed for that. Game warden came and took it. But I put a little fountain. I've been in a mason, I did walk the whole way. I worked in a refractory. And when they came in your home and tested for 0.1, okay, VOCs, I knew that was wrong because I know people that was telling me this is in the trillions, billions. So we had a meeting with the mayor, and he was a supervisor of the EPA, federal EPA. So I called him out on camera, and I have video after video. I said, at point one, I said, if these VOCs are poison to us in the millions, how is 0.1 VOC, it's wrong. You know what he said? You're absolutely correct. He admitted this on camera, you can ask my sister. He admitted it on camera that when they came into our home with these handheld devices, they don't test low enough to see if we're being poisoned or not. Because our house throws off VOCs, the flooring, the paint, a plastic cup throws off VOCs. So to test any lower than 0.1, that thing would have went off anyways. But he admitted their handheld things don't go that way. So here's another part of the story. I'm getting sick. I see people testing for vinyl chloride and benzene. So I go down to my health care provider, and I got this all on video also, because I have my phone in my pocket, on record. I go in there and I ask them about getting a prescription. They told me that they cannot test me because of the CDC guidelines. I said, what? I said, so you're telling me my home health care provider will not test me? So it goes on, and finally a doctor that I had when I was a little kid, he comes in, he said, I'll write you a prescription. So I get the prescription, and the whole time I'm recording, and I'm griping the whole time. The CDC, and I'm acting stupid because the only way that you can get them to answer questions is when they think you're stupid. You know, seriously. If you act dumb, they'll let little bits in pieces out, and you keep asking that question, and they'll give you a little bit more, and a little bit more. And so I got this all on video, and I released it, and I got bashed for it. But like I keep telling everybody, I value everybody's opinion. I don't care if you believe that we're being poisoned or not. I value your opinion. But I will fight for your children and for yourself because I know for a fact I'm being poisoned.
Our next video, I want you to listen to the interview with Amanda Kemmer, sharing what it's been like for her living in Darlington with her husband and 4 kids. That's just 4 miles from the East Palestine train derailment. This is, once again, Amanda Kemmer.
Gosh, I think it'll be 5 years this year that we've been in Darlington. My youngest will be 5 this year, so we moved out here when I was pregnant with him. So we've got about 6 acres of land out here. So we have 2 dogs, so we got some chickens, ducks, and we just got a boat last year for our kids to come and play around with. His name's Charger. They love our little boat. This is our dog. He likes to use his horns to play. He's excited when he gets out. It felt like paradise, and then, you know, we heard that the train derailed, and then on the 6th, I got an alert that they were going to be doing a controlled release. Oh yeah, the smoke? Absolutely. You can see it just coming over the sky. Big black cloud coming over. It was over a bay window, so you could just see it coming up and across the sky until all this was all black. So on the 6th, the 7th, 8th, and 9th, I was dealing with breathing issues from it. I was having to use an inhaler. My son's nebulizer I actually had to use. We're all dealing with headaches, sore throats. Here, all of my family side effects from the start. Go to your doctor. It has to be documented. Your doctor has to put in a note how many miles you lived from the train derailment, and then what symptoms you're having. It's like a full-time job having to navigate this and sift through the information and decide what's false, what's true. If there's a meeting that I have to go to, where can I get information, what testing I should get done. I had called the governor and the governor's office. You get 5 different numbers to call. And you call this number, then you call this number, this number, this number, goes all the way down to the local police department who tells me, listen, I live in this community. I don't know what's going on. I have no information to give you. This was a major disaster right across the line. We have seen nobody yet over here. Where's anybody in Pennsylvania? I was heard more in East Palestine than I was in Pennsylvania. I mean, those people are united, and those people are strong, and they're ready for a fight. You know, they're angry, and they want answers. And they should be. And they need to stand together to get their answers. That's the only way to get answers, is if we all come together and, you know, put the government, put Norfolk Southern, and put their feet to the fire and say, hey, listen, you're not going to get away this time. You need to be held accountable for this time. You put an entire town at risk. moms, even everybody downstream is at risk. Hundreds of people, if not thousands.
So these are just kind of like my daily pills that I take on a daily basis. There's a lot of them. Some of them are necessary and some are vitamins, so most of them are necessary. My mom does them for me, so she comes at the end of the week and fills them for me. These are my meds that I take for my cancer. My spice shelf has become my medicine holder because that takes so many. And then these are my supplements, my vitamins that I take. My mess here, sorry.
It feels horrible. I mean, Beaver County is already a hotspot for cancer to begin with because with everything along the river, people may say no, but there are cancer clusters in young adults all along Beaver County. I have so many friends my age and younger that have cancer already. It is scary and it's sad. People don't understand that these chemicals are toxic and they cause cancer. And I have stage 4. It's not something that a family should ever have to go through. And people should be scared. We are scared. And it's sad. And I don't want anybody to have to deal with what I'm dealing with. Ever. Nobody should ever have to deal with what I'm dealing with.
These are the stories. This is the reason why Social Voice Project and Riverwise are here tonight to get those stories, to get your stories, the oral history of it all. And it's a tragedy what we're hearing about from people, not only in this audience, but those who've already been interviewed. She's exactly right when you think about how many brownfield sites we have throughout this area and what's buried in the ground for years and years, a factory, and now this on top of something we've never experienced before. And when you see that film, and you folks were close up and personal with it, it's not imaginable what you were going through. If anyone else has anything to say, we can go to you right now. If not, we'll go to our next video. And the next video is Lisa Marie Sopko. Lisa is she owns Kindred Spirits Rescue Ranch in Darlington. Had to rely on help from all over to evacuate their animals to Hookstown Fairgrounds. This is what people were going through. This is Lisa Marie Sopko.
Thing that kind of came up and then, came over. So as soon as we saw that, we were like, oh no, this is not great. So it was pretty scary. I had put out pleas on social media, and then the Potters Township Fire Department, who had been here literally the day before when we were discussing, putting our county's animal response team back together. They got involved with it. They put out, a call. The manager of Tractor Supply, put out a call to everybody, that she knew. It was just a big network of, people just calling, people that had trailers, and they came, so it was amazing. My animals were so wonderful. These animals are so special, and they have come from such horrendous backgrounds, and we do work with them, building trust and building relationships with them to make them handleable and make them friendly and things. And again, it was the most amazing thing. These animals handled it so well. I mean, most of them, I think all but 4 of them were loaded so very easily. They went off to Hookstown Fairground, actually opened up to Just Us, which was, it just chokes me up to think about it, because, to find a place to put all of these animals is just mind-blowing. And they opened to Just Us, and these people who were strangers to our animals with these horrible backgrounds, they just went into stalls there so easily, and I mean, honestly, they were not traumatized. They just did amazing.
Stories are devastating, there's no question about it. The things that people have gone through, people they will continue to go through as we continue to look for guidance and direction. I think a couple of takeaways from it is one word that stands out from the audience and also the video portions of it is accountability. Accountability is what people are looking for. They want somebody to step forward and be held accountable for this disaster that occurred. We call it a derailment, and that minimizes it, I think. But it was a disaster, a catastrophic disaster. And I'm sure you following the news about this have seen other derailments around the country since this one happened. I don't think any of them have been as bad as the one in East Palestine, as far as the chemicals involved, but there have been a lot of derailments that have occurred throughout the last couple of months around the country. So is it the infrastructure that needs to be rebuilt? Is it Norfolk Southern, who's just running these trains haphazardly and don't feel the need to upgrade and update and putting people at risk who live in these communities? You notice the trains, once again, going through these areas all the time, and we have no clue as to what's being carried on those trains that are going through our communities. So accountability and vigilant. You must stay vigilant. I think it was said earlier on in the program that it is you have to keep on them about this. You have to have your voices out there and be heard. Because people will forget about it. People will move on. And if they're not personally affected by it, it's just another story, another day. So accountability, you have to hold their feet to the fire and be vigilant in getting your stories out. Contact, news media or anybody else that you can talk to, do podcasts or whatever. But you have to make sure that people don't forget this and that you're getting the testing done. Because there's a lot of money floating around out there. People are getting paid. Emergency responders are getting paid. They're getting money in their communities. There's other money that's being paid in different directions. But what about the homeowners? What about the property owners? What about the people? It's just, your story seems to be at the bottom of the priority list where, okay, we're going to take care of this, it looks good, we can get the money for the hazmat suits to the fire departments, but that's all well and good. But what about your home? What about the properties that people want to move out? And where's that coming from? You want to come back up, Kevin? Oh, sure. Sure. This is Kevin Farkas. Once again, folks from Riverwise and Kevin with Social Media, Social Voice Project, these guys are going to make this known to people, and they're going to keep the stories preserved after we're all long gone. People will know about this because of these guys.
I want to say something that I didn't say earlier when I spoke, and that is that we really have to thank the Little Beaver Historical Society for recognizing that these stories matter, of course, but the timeliness, right, in which we jumped into this project is very important. If you came in here earlier, you saw a slideshow of lots of the plumes and the gray clouds and so forth. All those photographs were taken from submissions from the public, and they were taken from social media and lots of other sources as quickly as you could, because good luck finding those now, right? A lot of those photographs that document this experience are gone, right? So when this all happened, Little Beaver and I, we got together and we said, hey, let's put a call out. Send us pictures. Send us your photographs so we can document as soon as we can. Well, we probably have well over 80, 90 photographs. Not the stuff that's in the media. That stuff is out there, right? You see that on the news and you see that a lot of other places. The stuff that we gathered is going to go into the archive before it's too late. These stories will go into the archive before it's too late, right? So I just wanted to thank Little Beaver Historical Society for stepping up and saying, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's figure out how to do this. I think this is a new project. I also want to thank the New Galley Community Event Center, the folks who run this. When they heard that we were looking for a place to have an event like this, which is a very unusual event, right? This is not the town halls you've seen. This is a community storytelling event. They're kind of rare, I think. So when they heard that we were looking for a place, they said, oh, you're a Little Beaver Historical Society? This is what you want to do? Absolutely. Have our hall for free. So I really want that on record. They were so generous to loan us this hall for this evening, and then like, do whatever you need to do. Move the tables, do whatever. Just put them back. So after you're done, we'll be putting these tables back. But I just wanted to say that. I want to thank the Historical Society and Riverwise for coming too. Riverwise is a stranger to this neck of the woods, I would say, right? So this is a nice introduction to you guys. We get to meet you. You get to meet us up here in this neck of the woods. So thank you for coming and being part of this. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Chris Padgett for taking some of those videos that you saw there. And his sensitivity, with the people who shared their experiences. So Chris, let's give Chris a round of applause. So thank you, Chris. And there is a sign-up sheet on that table. You've seen it when you came in. If you would like, if you would like to have your story recorded with us in a more long-form way, not public like this, then we will accommodate you. Get on that list so you're on our radar. So Daniel, you're holding up a QR code.
Yeah, they can go back, scan the QR code. I lied, it wasn't on the videos. It is back here. So.
Okay. Yeah, check out the table, talk to Kelly over there, and Daniel, scan your QR code if you're savvy with your smartphone. Mr. Lozier, did you want to speak?
If you don't mind.
Sure. That's why we're here.
I'm David Lozier, I live in Chippewa. This is not a night for politicians. But I spent all of these days in the county courthouse and working with the emergency management. And you mentioned a moment ago, that's what got me concerned about your fire department. New Galley's fire department was one of 18 Beaver County fire departments deployed to fight a fire. Yes, they were pouring water, because that's what they had. But I think there are several hundred firemen from our 18 fire departments, our emergency management personnel. There was nothing on the county's website because they were all in East Palestine. There was no one to put it on the website. They were all there for 4 days. But think of the firemen and the policemen and the ambulance attendants and emergency management people, and ultimately the PennDOT truck drivers who sat there and blocked Route 51, and the state troopers and the National Guard people. You're up to several thousand people who are out there for 4 or 5 days working 24-hour shifts, maybe getting a chance to go to sleep. But the impact on them is going to be severe. We're going to see this in 20 years among the emergency responders, just like we saw now from the 9/11 people who went in to fight, the 9/11 disaster. When I talked to your fire department, and Beaver Falls Fire Department and Big Beaver Fire Department, because they had to turn in proof of the damage. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage to the equipment, because everything that they wore for those 4 days is destroyed. Those chemicals had permeated the fibers. When the firemen came back to your fire station, the soles had melted off their shoes from the heat and the water and the chemicals. So I hope and pray that we keep in mind, there were government failures at many levels. But our local municipalities, our local firemen and police, they were there and they fought that battle. Their stories need to be recorded because the impact on them is going to be horrible. You had a police officer here tonight from Darlington Township who helped open this building. He's already been told that his blood is going to be tested on a regular basis for as long as he's a police officer because of the impact on those first responders. So let's keep in mind, it's residents of East Palestine, it's people who live here in Darlington. I'm at 8 miles, so I'm concerned, but there's nothing like what you guys went through. Those first responders, their story needs to be recorded. And again, 18 of our fire departments from here, I think over 30 fire departments in Ohio responded to this. 100 firemen, thousands of first responders, and they all need to be tested, and their story needs to be told as well. Thank you.
That tells you a lot, doesn't it? I mean, if he's talking about the first responders whose shoes were coming off them, and you know, the chemicals that are on, you guys are breathing that every day.
It's not to forget about their wives too.
Yeah.
When we went door to door, a lot of them were taking drinks and food down to the first responders too, and a lot of them were sick.
Yeah. Please don't go away from here tonight disappointed that there wasn't a bigger crowd, that there wasn't a sellout crowd, because it's your voices that matter. It's you who care enough to come here and share your stories, the stories on here, the stories, the oral history that these guys are recording for it. You have to keep going. It is. It's something that you have to keep it going. Each and every one of you and your neighbors, because if not, softball games, little league games, and everything else is going to get away, family vacations and stuff like that pretty soon. But if what District Attorney Lozier is saying, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment from the first responders, your houses are still there. Your kids are still there, and you're still, I don't know if you're drinking the water, because I know you got a lot of water donated, but your wells and everything else, if that was the contamination right after the explosion of the tankers, then would still in your soil and things like that. You have to keep people aware that this happened to you and that you need help. Because if he says people are going to have their blood tests years from now, what's going to happen? Are they forgetting about you? You know, how long have they told you how long it's going to be? I don't think they've mentioned anything like that yet. So don't be forgotten. And these guys, I know Kevin and Riverwise, they're not going to make your stories be forgotten. So thank you for coming out tonight and sharing it with us and for all in the future. Kevin, is that it? Got anything else? Riverwise, anything?
Just folks, when they stop with them, take a look at the picnic table outside. There's all kinds of supplies.
Thank you. Please, good health and God bless. Thank you all for being here.